Hello, boys and girls. You in your house and I'm in my house. And we're going to start today with singing all about a vintage car because that's what we've been chatting about, haven't we? So let's join together. And don't forget, there's a chocolate bar in this too. Twinkle, twinkle, chocolate bar, my daddy drives a vintage car. Push the button, pull the choke, off we go with a cloud of smoke. Twinkle, twinkle, chocolate bar, my daddy drives a vintage car. Now I know your daddy doesn't drive probably a vintage car, but Steve's got his little vintage car. We'll have a look at that again when we talk about a special poem that we've written. But for now, boys and girls, I hope that you pressed the button and that you pulled on the choke. Now when I was driving my little Anglia, my little Ford Anglia, I had to put the choke, and sometimes I'd have to pull the choke in and out because it just wouldn't start when the motor was cold. And the reason for that is we talked about last time. Remember, sometimes when your motor is cold and it's an old motor, the fuel is coming down here. It's got a special valve that lets it in and out, and the air comes down and it mixes with the fuel, and that's what starts your motor. On your brand new cars or your new cars that your mummy and daddy drive, they have an automatic choke, so they don't have to pull a button or push or do anything. It just happens. But with an old car, you have to have the choke, and you've got to pull out the choke, and that takes the air away, so lots of fuel gets put into the motor because the engine needs lots of fuel to make it go. So isn't that interesting, boys and girls? So your mummy and daddy's cars will have an automatic choke, but old cars like my little Anglia, I had to do that, and it used to you have to do it a couple of times, and then sometimes you do what's called flooding the motor, which is mean you've put too much fuel into your motor and not enough air. So you have to get that balance. But cars are very clever, and they just know exactly how much air and how much fuel needs to go to start your lovely new motors. Now, I asked a very special question last time I was here, and I wanted to ask you about the exhaust in a car. Now, do you know, boys and girls, not only are cars dangerous if you go in front of them and your daddy or mummy or whoever, a big person is driving the car, can't see you, but the gas that comes out of the engine is actually very dangerous. If you breathe lots in, it can make you very, very sick. So boys and girls, the people who designed cars were very clever. Now I want to show you Steve's special sports car, because on the bottom of his special sports car, it shows you the big motor. Now, after the motor has used all that beautiful fuel that's been put into the motor, then the special gas that comes off that's very poisonous gets taken all the way to the back of the car and comes out there. And sometimes you can see the exhaust pipes. You go and have a look. Go and have a look at your mummy or daddy's car, because sometimes there's 2 exhaust pipes, sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's an exhaust pipe down this side and 1 down that side. But when you look, make sure that the motor isn't running, because when the motor is running, that very poisonous, dangerous gas that comes out here where you're standing is very, very bad for you to breathe. So you have to be quite careful with cars, because that gas can hurt you. And Stephen told me that there's something really important that lots of cars have in the middle of this exhaust called a muffler. because not only does that exhaust take that very dangerous gas away, I think it's called carbon monoxide, it also, lots and lots of cars have what's called a muffler, and that muffles the sound because the engine is very loud and noisy, and with that gas coming out, it makes a big, big noise. And so that there is a muffler, and as the gas comes down, it makes it nice and quiet. But if that gas came out there, that could go into your this part of the car where you're seated, and it could be very poisonous for you. And also that noise would be heard inside the car. So we do need that exhaust pipe, and we do need a muffler. Sometimes cars don't have a muffler, and they're ever so noisy. So very important things. Engine uses all that fuel that you see your mummy and daddy put in this little car. The fuel goes in at the top, and see in this little car, there's the engine that uses all that fuel up. And then when it's using up that fuel, it gives off this gas, and then that gas gets taken away from the engine part all the way down the exhaust. And then when you see a car on the road, you can see it's two little exhaust pipes there, or one. Have a look, see if you can see the exhaust on your mummy or your daddy's car, or someone big who lives at your house, because that has a very, very important job to do. In fact, there are so many important parts on a car, and if you don't have one of those important parts, you won't get a special warrant of fitness, which means that you are allowed to drive the car on the road. So tomorrow we might look at some other important parts, and I know that you are so clever that you'll be able to think of some. I'll give you a clue. What do you think it is? Okay, wait for tomorrow. We're going to talk about some other very, very important parts of a car. And if you look at this little car, you can see some special things that are very important just inside the car. And if you get time to go and look at your mummy or your daddy's car, have a look at some other parts that will be really important when your mummy drives or your daddy drives that car on the road. Interesting, isn't it? So many parts. And we're just going to have a quick look at lovely Sue's special diagram that she did especially for us. And there's that beautiful car. There's the bonnet that lifts up. The motor sits under there, and coming underneath, look, sticking out there, Sue has drawn the exhaust pipe. So the motor is in there. Remember, Steve has often spoken about the grill that lets the air come in to cool the motor too. And then the gas, that poisonous gas, comes underneath and out. Sue's written exhaust because that's a very important part of a car. So thank you, Sue, for that. We love your colouring and your drawing and your naming. It's really beautiful. Okay, my little sweethearts, we're going to get and drive a car, and you can drive any coloured car. You could drive a white car or a red car, but when you go and spot your mummy or your daddy's car, you could sing a song when you're looking at it. You'll be able to see if it's a blue one. Oh, I'm driving in my little blue car. You might even be able to hop on the inside of a car or truck. I know I saw a picture of Lyra and her little brother, and they were sitting on the front seat, and I think it was Lyra that had her hands were around the steering wheel. Now that's a clue for something that's really important. And they were pretending to drive. Okay, so we're going to do that right now. Oh, I'm driving in my little white car. Vroom, vroom. Oh, I'm driving in my little white car. Vroom, vroom. Oh, I'm driving in my car. Driving in my car. Oh, I'm driving in my little sharing. And I know that some of you boys and girls have got electric cars, and evidently you don't have a motor in your electric car. Is that right, Steve?
They have an electric motor.
They have electric motor, do they? But it's not a big engine like in the diesel.
Doesn't take up quite as much space, but it's just as powerful.
Oh, there you go. So I'll have to ask Steve and get some more information about electric cars, won't we? But for the moment, we're talking about petrol cars, cars that take fuel and the awful gas that is given off. But luckily, there's an exhaust to take it away. But we don't stand behind cars. In fact, we keep right away from cars because they are quite dangerous things. Okay, my little sweetheart, so we're going to just say our special poem. Remember our little old car poem, Steve's little vintage car, and this is specially for him. My favourite car is very old, well over 60 years, I'm told. It doesn't go fast, but when I'm done, I have had so much fun. And it's always fun to go in a little vintage car. It really is, boys and girls. In fact, Stephen and I went to a special little town, and we went to an old museum, and it was on a Sunday, and there were lots and lots of vintage cars. So Steve was smiling, he had a big smile on his face. And do you know what, boys and girls? There were people driving those vintage cars, and they were taking boys and girls for a ride in them. And they looked so happy, and they were going beep, beep, beep. And their horns were so cute. Some were high, some were low, some were even musical. So it was such a fun time. And lots of people were having fun in their old car. But I know you guys have had fun in your new cars. My favourite car is very new. Couldn't believe how fast I flew. It goes very fast, and when I'm done, how do you feel? I have had so much fun. And I know your daddies might like driving their cars a little bit faster, or your mummies might like, but I know that your mummies and daddies are always careful when they're driving their car. Right, my little sweethearts, have a think, put your thinking cap on, see if you can go and look closely at your mummy or your daddy's car. Have a look and see if you can see the exhaust coming out, and you can always see it's nice and silver, and it's usually at the back of it's always at the back of the car. See if you can spot some other things that are very, very important that are inside a car, and something that might be on the outside of the car. Have a look for me, and I can't wait to be back with you tomorrow. Be gorgeous children. We love you so much. Mwah.